everyone to the Tuesday evening meditation class. A special welcome to those who are new today as well. Just for the benefit of those who are new today, I'll go very quickly over how to meditate. And often the reason people are interested to explore meditation in the first place is that it's proven very relevant to the way people tend to lead their lives in the present day, which is to be very much caught up in the things which are trying to hijack their attention all around them in their lives. I'm not saying that it's bad to be attentive and take an interest in what's going on around you, but there comes a point where if we're constantly caught up in those sorts of things, we find ourselves depleted of mental energy. And the idea of meditation is that by gathering up your mind and gathering it back from all those things which are trying to dominate our attention back to a place within ourselves, then we start to get some of that energy back again. And meditation is proposed as a way to do that, to work with the mind, to get it to come back to a place where it can be balanced within the space of the body. And there are many ways to meditate. For example, you may have heard of breathing meditation. In that particular case, if you got your mind to focus on your breath, then because your breath is going in and out within the space of your body like a column of air, then for as long as your mind is on your breath, then it will be somewhere inside your body. So that will immediately be a more relaxing place for your mind to be focused. But even simpler than that, and something that doesn't involve a moving target, would be to have some sort of imaginary object, which you have conjured up in your mind's eye, and place that object within the space of your body. And if you have a choice of where to put that object within yourself, then a very good suggestion would be the little flashing point there, which is sometimes known as the solar plexus. It's the same place as if you breathed all the way into the deepest point of your breath. It's where the breath turns around before it comes back out again. So the point of the deepest part of your breath. Yeah. But in practice, you can just pick anywhere inside you that feels comfortable. Feels like the sort of place where you could rest your mind for a long, long time and be contented to do that. Because sometimes out of the sense of contentment comes forth a sense of peace in the mind. So although that is the theory, but in practice, yours might be in a place in that general area, but not quite on the two crosshairs, as it were. Yeah. Some people find a particular struggle with thoughts in the mind, and generally if we have a lot of thoughts going on, a very busy mind, then we can try ignoring the thoughts, and generally the thoughts will become quieter on their own. But if we find that just ignoring them isn't helping the situation, then we may need to go one step further, which is to use something called a mantra, which means basically fighting fire with fire, having some words of our own, passing constantly through the mind, which will then sort of block that channel of the mind and reduce the thoughts. And the traditional mantra that goes with this meditation lineage is the words, you can see there, Samma Arahang. And you'd hear the sound of those coming up again from the center of your body. Not out loud, but just passing through the mind, resonating as it were, for as long as it takes to cut through the random thoughts in the mind. And it may be that from your own spiritual tradition, you have a mantra which you prefer to those words, in which case you can substitute in. It would work just as efficiently. Yeah. So we're going to sit for meditation now for about 30 minutes, and in order to get comfortable, some people sitting cross-legged on the floor, in which case generally we go for what's known as a half lotus position. Go there. Where the right foot is up on the calf of the left leg, and the right hand is placed on the left hand. The hand's palm upwards in one's lap, index finger of the right hand against the thumb of the left hand. Again, all good theory, and if you want to adapt to something that's more comfortable for you, then please feel free to do so. If you're sitting on a chair, then it's best to sit fairly upright, not quite bolt upright, but enough to find the center of your body easily, and also to breathe to the full depth of your lungs as well. So we'll sit for meditation now for about a half an hour. So we start by closing our eyes very gently. Closing our eyes in the same way we'd close them to go to sleep. Not squeezing our eyes closed, but just letting our upper and lower eyelashes touch gently together. And to relax our body, we start by taking a few deep breaths to ourselves. Breathing in to the full extent of our lungs, and then breathing slowly and smoothly out again. Once again, we breathe the cool, refreshing air from around us. And when we breathe out, we may feel that we're letting go of any worries or concerns still lingering on our mind. Meditation is mostly about our mind, but to create the conditions that allow us to work effectively with the mind, we need to relax our body first of all. And the way we do this is by what's known as a body scan, which means scanning down through the whole of our body, relaxing each and every muscle as we go. So starting at our forehead, we relax any tension in the muscles there. Then we relax our eyebrows and our eyelids. Checking once again that the way we've closed our eyes is as gentle as possible. We let the muscles of our face become soft. Relax our jaw. Taking special care that we have not clenched our teeth together. Before moving on down to relax our neck and let our shoulders drop to their natural height. From there we relax our arms, our forearms, and then our hands and fingers, so that our hands are resting only very gently in our lap. And then continuing on down, we relax the whole of our torso, our chest, trunk, and the muscles across our tummy. Before moving on down to relax our legs, all the way to our feet and our toes. Until there's no remaining part of our body with any sort of stress or tension anymore. If we do notice knots of tension remaining anywhere in our body, then we do our best to relax them as far as possible, almost to the point that our whole body seems to disappear or melt away into the atmosphere around us. And this will allow us to turn our attention inward to the feeling inside us, that sense of warmth and well-being and of inner space, something which by any other name we might call our state of mind. And even our mind needs a little bit of mood setting to ensure the success of the meditation ahead. The way to do that is to put aside any worries or concerns still weighing on your mind, any regrets from your past or plans for the future, to leave nothing but the present moment, leaving nothing but the here and now, while we bring our awareness back within the space of the body to a safe place, a safe haven for the mind that some people have described as being like a bunker that protects the mind. Because for as long as our mind is all located on the inside of us, it's somehow shielded against the impacts of the outside world. So inside ourselves we conjure up a sense of happiness and joy in the mind. And if those feelings don't come automatically to us, then you might cast your mind back to a time in your life when you did feel truly happy, thinking not so much about the place or the situation, but more about the feeling itself that it brought you on the inside. That warm, fuzzy feeling. And you can conjure up the same feeling within yourself now, almost as if it were tiny particles of happiness and joy growing and spreading inside yourself until it fills up the whole of your body and mind, leaving no space inside yourself for any other sort of thought. And when you feel relaxed and refreshed, both in body and in mind, very gently and using no effort at all, you can imagine that inside your body is just an empty space, like a hollow cavity with no organs or tissues, no muscles or bones. Or as if your whole body has been transformed into a sort of transparent bubble with nothing on the inside. And within this empty space of our body and mind, we can call to mind a picture of something like a bright, shining sun, or alternatively a full moon, a star, or perhaps a sparkling diamond. But this time we are relocating that imaginary picture to bring it within the space of our own body. We don't worry too much if the actual picture is not very clear. Even if it's vague, we accept it anyway. And we should bear in mind that for about half the people who meditate, it's going to be more of a feeling than a picture, in which case we can guide that object down within the space of our body by how it feels, the warmth or the shape and texture of the object. In any case, we bring the object slowly downwards within the space of our body, almost as if we were slowly breathing the object down to the deepest point of our breath, or as if we were gently swallowing the object down within ourselves to reach the very deepest point of our stomach. And once it reaches that point, or a point that feels comfortable for us, down inside ourselves, all we have to do is gently maintain the inner object at the center of ourselves, as continuously as we can, for as long as we can, not letting our attention slip away anywhere else if we can help it. If we do find our attention wandering away, then it's not the end of the world. We just bring our attention back again to the inner object. And if the inner object disappears, then we can just think of a new one. As for the possible problem of there being thoughts in the mind, the thoughts are at a low level, and often we can just ignore those thoughts, treat them like unwanted guests, to the point that they will eventually die down into silence all by themselves, almost like guests that might go away if you starve them of attention. They will eventually go away all by themselves, even without a confrontation. But if you're one of those people who tends to have a lot of thoughts in the mind, then it may be the case that you need to make use of the traditional mantra, hearing the sound of the words Samma Arahang, or your own equivalent, not saying the words out loud, but hearing them silently coming up from the center of your body, as if that were the source of the sound. In other words, the same place that you see or feel the inner object. So we hear the words Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, over and over again, lightly, gently, continuously, leading the mind deeper at the center of the body, while at the same time freeing the mind of any extraneous thoughts, until the mind comes closer and closer to an approximation of silence within. In the beginning, it may seem that there are a lot of thoughts, with very few gaps in between. But as time goes on in the meditation, the gaps will become longer, until the thoughts are less numerous than the gaps themselves. And you'll start to discern a sense of connection between your mind and the center of yourself. As some people observe in their meditation, if they apply the mind only very gently, not trying to force anything, not trying to hurry anything along, observing with a very light and gentle attention, it may be possible for the inner object to start to change and transform on its own. In which case you just follow the inner experience. Follow the way it evolves without interfering, without changing it back to what it was before. Always focusing at the center of whatever you see or feel within yourself. And the byproduct of that inner transformation will be a mind that gradually becomes calmer, that will gradually shed any negativity, giving rise to a sense of inner knowledge, a sense of mastery, a sense of clarity from within, which seems to cleanse us from the inside. And these changes for the good will stay with us long after the meditation itself. So for now, we focus gently at the center of ourselves, focusing with the same lightness of a feather floating down to touch on the surface of some water, with the same care that we might use to thread a needle. In other words, no hurry, no force, just a sense of lightness that will be rewarded with an increasing sense of joy from within. So we continue in this way just for a few more moments now in silence until we come to the appropriate time. wanders off onto other things. Each time you realize, simply bring your attention back again to the center of the body as before. Whether it's 100 times or 1,000 times your mind wanders off, just keep on bringing it back each time, and you'll start to notice that from spending more time wandering, and it spends in place, little by little your mind will start to become settled more than it wanders. And a feeling will build up of being connected with the center of your body. If the inner object disappears, you can think of a new one. If it changes, just follow it in its new form, always at the center of whatever you see or feel. And with meditation, practice makes perfect. It's always something that we need to work at, just as we might work at a new language or a new sporting skill. The things that we do regularly become things that we become adept at. For some things like physical exercise, 2 or 3 times a week will be enough to keep you fit. But for meditation, a little each day is mostly what we would consider ideal as a way to move forward in our meditation practice. If we practice a little each day, before long we'll start to see some improvement in the ease with which we can meditate. We find that we're able to go further in the same length of time, or achieve a greater sense of peace. There'll be a gradual accumulation of peacefulness within ourselves, especially toward the end of the practice. There'll be a sense of well-being that builds up inside ourselves, a sense of calm that seems to be fostered within the mind. And it'll be a sense of calm that stays with us. Even as we get up from our meditation to do other things, we'll still feel calm from our meditation, as if it's something that we carry around with us. When we're new to meditation, sometimes the sense of calm will wear off after a while, especially when we come across things in our lives that are irritating or annoying to us. But as we become more adept in meditation, the sense of calm will become more robust, more resilient, and it will stay with us in spite of the challenges we encounter in life, until eventually there will be a seamless connection both inside and outside of our meditation practice. When we've got our eyes closed, sitting on our meditation mat, then that would be called meditation proper. When we've got our eyes open, doing other things, maintaining that sense of calm is known as mindfulness. So meditation and mindfulness, hand in hand, can help us maintain a sense of well-being throughout our day, which is really what we're aiming for. So for now we continue to keep our mind on track at the center of ourselves, lightly and gently, using only the very lightest of touch to keep the mind in place. Each to our own practice, just for a few more moments in silence until we come to the appropriate time. Sapphi Buddha Balapata Pachekanan Balang Arahantanan Te Chena Arakam Bandami Sapaso Savabuddhanupavena Sapatammanupavena Sapasankhanupavena Satha Soti Pavanto Te. So if you'd like to come to the end of your meditation for this evening, you can gradually open your eyes again. If you feel at all uncomfortable, then slowly try changing to a more comfortable position before gradually finishing your practice. So far, so good, everyone. Not too long for you. Doing very well, I think. It's about 35 minutes today. So, to move very gently to our subject matter for today, I'd like to continue with what is, on the face of it, a little bit of an unpopular subject for most audiences, like, oh, you meditators are no fun. Why, in the culture of those who meditate, clarity of mind is seen to be something which does best if not dissolved in alcohol. And within Buddhist culture, the ideal is to avoid drinking alcohol or using non-medicinal drugs or even smoking, because somehow it detracts from clarity of mind, all that good work that we put into our meditation. It's a shame to ruin it by taking substances which compromise that clarity in some way. And yes, I'm usually at a little bit of a loss for how to make fairly weighty subjects like this one into anything which is interesting to listen to. But last time we probably had a worse installment of this one, and we talked already in the first part about the perils, basically, of drinking alcohol and what exactly that meant. But today it's a little bit lighter, I hope, talking a little bit more about the benefits of avoiding consuming alcohol, and also some of the most recent trends in recovery for those who have an addiction of some sort. When I had a look to see who are the sort of people who are non-drinkers these days, the first person I found was Donald Trump. So that put me off exploring that in much more detail. But I did find a few more sort of slightly more savory characters. Natalie Portman, Jennifer Lopez, Tom Cruise, David Beckham, Elton John, Joe Biden, Russell Brand, Bruce Willis, Tilda Swinton, Naomi Campbell. Surprisingly, I don't know if it's just something that comes with age, but some people who are A-listers of various sorts, or are serious about their sports performance, for example, seem to favor this as a lifestyle. And I don't think it's because they're meditators. I think it's probably just because everything they do is high stakes. But the whole idea of teetotal, I used to wonder why they didn't spell it like T-E-A. Like, you're only allowed to drink tea, is that like the meaning of it? And apparently it comes from T as in capital T for total. Because in the old days they used to have like just alcohol in moderation, and it was like sort of none at all. They do it with a capital T. So it used to be teetotal. That's where that word came from. But within the culture of meditation, not drinking at all is said to have several quality is especially helpful if you are thinking to go far in your meditation. Omniscience sounds a bit far-fetched, perhaps. You know about everything in detail. And apparently you know about the past, you know about the future, and you know about the present. Yes, and you have mindfulness in all situations, a very reliable conscience. You have a sense of not being reckless, freedom from enemies, respect from others, and happiness ultimately. Some more ones. It goes on. Appreciation of other people's virtues, gratitude comes more easily, a sense of generosity, keeping your ethical precepts pure is easier if you have a clear mind. Wisdom comes more easily to you. Worldly and spiritual wealth is attracted to you apparently, rather than disappearing down the plug hole. And you would be able to be a true refuge to yourself and overcome the subtle defilements before entering nirvana. Yeah. Many of the groups I've visited up and down the country, both in Britain and abroad, many come from what's known as 12-step recovery. Funnily enough, I have whole audiences sometimes who all know each other from AA groups. And you might think, well, it's a strange thing to be meditating too. But in the West, many quitting alcohol are involved in self-help groups of various sorts. Some are involved in inpatient therapy or outpatient rehabilitation. And sometimes I've been asked to give meditation training both for those in rehab, for alcohol, drugs. Beverly Hills is one excuse I had to go to Beverly Hills was teaching in a rehab center there. Yeah, $5,000 a shot. So only for fairly sort of well-to-do clients. Yeah. And sometimes for the counselors themselves, because they have it pretty tough as well. But most commonly, they are involved in a 12-step recovery process at one level or another. And sometimes the 12-step process has had quite a bad rap. There was someone called Charlie Sheen, who had a bit of a rant recently and claimed that 12-step has only about 5% success rate. But actually, if you look at the real statistics for the people who work from publications like Living Sober or The Big Book, which is often a legal requirement for people who are had drink or drug-related misdemeanors, then the AA's own statistics maintains that those who can quit drugs or alcohol for 5 years or more continuously relapse less than 15% of the time. Pretty good, right? And independent research, so it's not from the AA, said that relapse rate may be a little bit higher, probably about 40 to 60%. So still a lot better than the 5% I was saying before. But one thing which sort of has a link between recovery and things like meditation and even Buddhism is that often the whole process requires something almost quasi-spiritual from people to bolster their sort of determination to go through the whole process. There's something which the AA don't provide for themselves, but they say to reach out to some sort of higher power in order to have this sort of will to see the process through. And this is often where meditation comes in various forms. To help to make people stronger when they need to be. And mindfulness, especially meditation, can provide the psychological tools which people need to overcome the use of intoxicants. And from the originators of mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, so from the 2002 book called Mindfulness-Based Cognitive Therapy, the suggestion they had was it's very hard within those AA groups to teach meditation because you need to be a meditator yourself in order to communicate it to other people. So they're often looking outside their group for that expertise. With change within that 12-step process, often you hear about the 6 stages of change. Am I boring you? Have you heard about this before? You may have heard about it, because it's been around for quite a while, but it's still used, okay? But in brief, the problem often with addiction, so when is like having the odd drink different from an addiction? What's the difference? Can you tell me? When does any behavior become a habit? How would you know a behavior has become a habit? When? Well, you might keep on doing it because it makes you happy. It's like brush your teeth, it's like you keep on doing it. Well, the answer in brief is when you don't get to do it, it makes you sort of irritated. Yeah. So if you have an odd behavior now and then, doing it, not doing it, it's the same to you, then that's not yet a habit. But once it becomes something that if you don't do it, it sort of affects you very strongly in some way, makes you not yourself, then that is when you have a problem of some sort, in which case what I'm talking about suddenly becomes relevant to you. But the thing about this 6 stages of change is that often people don't accept they have a problem. And that's a really hard stage to get beyond. Because if a person doesn't accept they have a problem, then they're not going to do anything to fix it. So a lot in the first stages is to do with people accepting that they have a problem so that they can do something about it. And as for the final few steps, there's this thing about coming to a point where those things no longer have a hold over you anymore. But you might be triggered. So in some places they don't even put the 6th one on there, termination, because they think you'll never get past stage 5. It's that hard to give up some of these substances. Yeah, so just a heads up. The practicality, and this comes from the Buddhist side. First thing you need to appreciate, there's a danger in it. It's not just like for a laugh. And the person themselves needs to have the intention to do something about it. It's not something that a well-meaning relative can have their intention for them. The person really needs to be invested themselves in doing something about it. You know, I can talk until I'm blue in the face, but people need to sort of believe it in order for it to sink in and to be of any use to them. Within Buddhism, often they talk about bolstering conscience on various levels. So when you are confronted by something which is tempting to you, often you try to be patient in order to avoid caving to urges which you have to go back to the sort of behaviors which you're trying to avoid. So putting up with things, not giving in to your urges, generally that's a fairly sort of quite a hard struggle for people. But at the first level, often it's talked about using the full extent of your patience in order to not give in to those urges. There may come a point, however, where the patience is not enough, and Buddhists often suggest you take one step back from it and you think about the other people whose lives you are affecting. So although for yourself you may not care very much about whether you go back to square one again, but out of respect for those around you, maybe that would be a more powerful influence on your conscience. So you take one step back and, instead of patience, engage with respect. Sometimes your respect for others is not enough, in which case you take one step back again, which is to think about gratitude. And gratitude often is more undeniable for you. Think about the things people have done for you and how somehow you ought to be better than this because of the things which people have done for you in the past. Sometimes that can be the thing that you can step back on as a last resort in order to bolster your conscience. And last but not least, triggers. Avoiding the group of friends who tend to pull you back into those old habits again, or the places, or even, I might say, the paraphernalia. Some people like collecting odd liqueur bottles and that sort of thing around their house. If you're if you're in recovery, that can be a real risk. Even just the bottles themselves, it just reminds you. So sometimes it's good to have a clean sweep of even those sorts of things. As for crossovers between mindfulness and recovery, some interesting books have come out recently, which are adaptations of the 12-step program, but they put in the mindfulness or the meditation alongside the actual steps, which a lot of people who have an inclination to meditate anyway find very helpful. So you can think of giving in to urges almost as a sort of lack of mindfulness. That's how they put it. Whereas if you are fully mindful, then you can keep up with your urges. You see how that might work? So they almost see the whole recovery process as an exercise in mindfulness. Yeah. And addiction they almost see as a form of forgetfulness. Yeah. Another approach, so that one was Bien and Bien, husband-wife team. Another approach, this one from Noah Levine, has been to frame recovery in terms of suffering. Four Noble Truths, I think you've had that from Venerable Pisit on some Thursday nights. Four Noble Truths, suffering, origin of suffering, end of suffering, and the path to the end of suffering. Some of you have heard that. Well, they frame the whole recovery in that, how can you get out of suffering, basically. And the Eightfold Path in this particular case is pretty much a condensation of the 12 stages. Yeah? My own experiences with trying to overcome various sorts of alcohol or tobacco-related involvement actually goes back to, in the history of our organization, to about the golden years of 2004 or so. They did a lot of campaigning for giving up alcohol. So I did this partly in Thailand. So I had a great time with an interreligious sort of contingent down in the south of Thailand, where they would round up all the alcohol from everyone's houses, pour it away, smash the bottles, and then crush up the bottles in safety sacks before throwing them away. Yeah. And we did this also going back to 2004 in some of our branches as well. But as a result, many of the restaurants that sold alcohol and to be honest, most of the profit in restaurants comes from selling alcohol. If you just sell food alone, it's pretty hard to break even. But a lot of them went as far as to do that, just to encourage the values going with meditation. There's still many of the Thai restaurants here in Britain who either have a bring your own policy or try to encourage a more family atmosphere, let's say, in their restaurants. Anyway, to finish, I will give you a little story. And it's a story about monks with mental powers. Have you heard of some mental powers originating as a result of meditation? Or you had omniscience just now? Well, the story goes, and this is from the Jataka tales, which is usually previous lifetime stories, which are part of the Buddhist scriptures. But it relates to a particular situation that happened when the Buddha was still alive. And amongst the number of his monks, there were some monks who had not quite become enlightened yet, but seeing as they were doing very well in their meditation, they had come across some mental attainments which gave them certain powers of mind. So really enlightenment is the mental power we're most interested in, but sometimes there are some good, cool things you can do along the way as a result of your mental powers and focus. Yeah? And the Buddha was going through a particular area which was known as Padapatika. And as he was coming into that area, a lot of the travelers coming in the opposite direction warned the Buddha and the monks, don't go any further in that direction because there's a really dangerous serpent that lives down that direction. And the serpent was very destructive and antagonistic towards anyone that came within its range. But the Buddha ignored their advice and he made a beeline for where the serpent was in case he could do something to sort of alleviate the situation. So the monastic community set up a camp in the forest not very far from where the serpent was located, and they delegated one particular monk who had lots of mental powers, and his name was Mr. Sagata. His name was Sagata. And he went very close to where the serpent was living and made a mat out of straw and sat in meditation to wait for when the serpent would appear. And the serpent couldn't stand the sight of a monk meditating nearby. So he thought he would try it on with the monk. So first of all, the serpent came and he breathed smoke all over the monk. And the monk sort of used his mental powers to deflect the smoke. Yeah. So have you got to that stage yet in your meditation? Maybe waft the smoke away. Okay. So the serpent upped the ante, and this time he breathed fire over the monk. But the monk did the same thing. He deflected the fire back at the serpent until the serpent became too hot and bothered to continue. At which point it became a much more sort of amenable to being talked to. And then the monk taught the serpent to calm down his aggression and to engage with meditation more and this sort of thing. And the serpent gave up the idea of attacking people with its smoke and fire from that time onwards. And the main thing about this story is that the monk returned sort of victorious, as it were, to the company of monks, and the word got around that, ooh, this monk must be really courageous and well established in their meditation because he's managed to stop this serpent that has been bothering the whole community for so long, and all the people were very grateful to the monk. And generally, as the people wanted to show their gratitude in some way, they wanted to offer something special to show their gratitude to the monk for helping them to have more safety. And there was a certain group of monks who were not quite so well behaved, a group of 6 of them. And they whispered in the ears of these grateful householders that maybe a great idea would be to offer some white alcohol to the monk, because normally monks don't get to have alcohol like that. So it'd be a real sort of delicacy. And the people said, we never heard of that before. Now we've heard it from you, then maybe we'll try that. So as the monk was going around with his alms bowl in the morning, the Venerable Sakata with all his magical powers and so on, the people all started putting alcohol in his alms bowl, and it all gets mixed up. Yeah? In one black bowl, you got all the food in there, and if half it's now alcohol as well, then it all soaks into the food. So to cut a long story short, after sitting down to have his food that day, then the Venerable Sakata became firstly very sleepy, and then less and less in control of himself. And as he was making his way back to his temple, he fell down in the street and just sort of fell asleep face down in the street. And the other monks returning from their alms round found him in the street and sort of one on either side took him back to the temple. At which point the Buddha also arrived and asked, well, what has happened to this monk? And they arranged him so that he had his head pointing towards the Buddha because he couldn't stand up anymore. But the moment he was, they let him free again, he turned around so his feet were pointing towards the Buddha. So this is probably the origin of why we don't point our feet towards the Buddha statue. And the Buddha said something like, who was the monk who was so powerful before that he could subdue this dangerous serpent? And they said, oh, we believe it was this monk. And how about now? Does he even have the power anymore to overcome a water snake? And they said, no, we don't think he does have that power anymore, especially when he's being sort of rather rude in the way that he's even lying in the presence of the Buddha. So from that time on, the Buddha actually laid down the rule that although monks generally accept anything they're given, but if it's alcohol, they may no longer accept it, because from a monk who was outstanding in his mental powers, he lost everything he had and became just a sort of a complete mess. So this is something on the perils which alcohol can do to those, even those who have made quite big advances in their meditation. So please beware. To finish off with today, for those who are new to meditation, I would like to encourage you to remember how you've meditated today and try to meditate a little at home each day if you can as well, to build up the habit. If it can be a daily habit, sitting for about maybe 20 minutes a day to meditate to start off with, maybe in the morning, or maybe last thing at night, or maybe in your lunch hour if you have a stressful job, then that would be a good way to establish a sense of a continuity in your meditation practice and see that progress. If you have difficulty remembering the meditation technique, then you may make use of what's known as the Mind Gem app, which you can download onto your mobile phone, iOS or Android, and it has more than 100 audio tracks leading meditation from our tradition, which you can follow along with of different lengths. So you can set a timer for your meditation actually in the app and sit for a length of time that's suitable for you. Here in the meditation center, we have classes every Tuesday and Thursday evening at the moment. The only difference between the Tuesday and Thursday evenings is that the meditations on a Thursday are a little bit longer, up to 45 minutes. And those are also posted online, so you can find them on the YouTube channel of the temple as well, for those who want to catch up on any episodes which you have missed. Coming up on the 23rd of October, we have the biggest ceremony of the year for our temple, which we hope this year will gather together about 400 people. Back to full strength again after the pandemic. Last year we had about 200, even with the pandemic still sort of around. So this year we hope to be back to full steam ahead. You may be interested to participate in that ceremony by coming along between 9 and usually 3 in the afternoon on the day, or for any part of the day that is of particular interest to you. We are also looking for volunteers to help set up on the days leading up to it, during the ceremony itself, to sort of organize things and to clear up afterwards, of course. There's quite a lot of logistics involved with feeding everyone and directing people to where they need to be, as you can imagine. If you would like to be someone who is a little bit more savvy about what's going on volunteer-wise, we are having a little training day on the 9th of October, which you might want to attend, because most of the volunteers who do help, they just turn up on the day and they don't know the bigger picture. So if you have free time on the 9th of October on the Sunday, then between, again, about 9 in the morning and then through the day, lunch is provided. You can find out the program so that you can guide other volunteers who turn up later than you. And of course, you can also give donations. They have special envelopes for that as well. The proceeds from this year's Katina will be going towards building 2 little annexes at the front of the building here, one for a reception area and one for as a sort of children's play area. Yeah. And online, we still have the Saturday meditation for the whole of Europe between 7 and 8 p.m. every Saturday, which you can tune into on Zoom, those Zoom coordinates. And there is a full moon meditation coming up next Tuesday, which is in place of the normal class, where apart from meditating and hearing a little bit of a wisdom talk on the theme of the end of Buddhist Lent, there's also the opportunity to light candles as well on the occasion of the full moon of October. So that is all I have for you today. But if there are any questions, comments, or feedback at this point, I'd be very pleased to hear from you. Well, there are cannabis products which seem to help with certain medical conditions like epilepsy, which the Buddhist standpoint would be, in that case, where it's prescription drug, it would be seen as something which is acceptable. But generally speaking, so-called lifestyle drugs or recreational drugs would not be encouraged, no. All of you enjoy happiness, success, and prosperity in life, and have clarity of mind, omniscience, and progress in your meditation without end.